chart, and don't go into edit mode. Do not double click on it. As soon as it's highlighted, you click on it once, you start typing projected revenue and expenses. Now notice that nothing's actually happening in the chart title, but in the formula bar, that's where all the data is being shown. So you can check it, make sure it looks good. When you're done, you can hit enter, or you can click on the enter button, and that brings over the information that we typed. Now we are going to configure, we're going to make changes to the title. We're going to go to our home tab. We are going to change the font to Calibri Light. So we're going to click on the drop down, Calibri Light, and then we're going to change the font color to blue accent 1. So blue, let's look for our blue. There's our blue, and then that's accent 5. So let's look here, blue accent 1. And we're done making our changes to our clustered column chart. Now we're going to create a stacked column chart. Now notice that it's called clustered column because the columns themselves are clustered together, in this case by year. So we're going to go to our projected cash flow tab, and we're going to highlight the non-adjacent range of B4 through L4. So B4 through L4. We're going to hold down the control key because we also need to add B13 to L17. So B13, hold down the control key, B13 through L17. Notice that both ranges are highlighted. And is that it on the non-adjacent ranges? Yes, that's it. So now we're going to go to our insert tab because we're going to insert another chart. We're going to go into our charts area, and we're going to look at column charts. So we don't have an actual icon for a stacked column chart. So my guess is if we click here, we're going to find our stacked column chart. So we're going to go ahead and click on that. Now the information actually does not look right on mine, so I must have done something wrong. Let me double check my work real quick. Okay, I found my mistake. The second range I did incorrectly. So I was going to show you how to fix it, but I think I'd rather just show you how to do it right instead. So let's get rid of this. And let's do it, let's choose the correct ranges this time. So we have B4 through L4, and then B13, this is where I made the mistake. B13, starting with grapes, through L17. I didn't go all the way down. So we go back to our insert, go to our column, insert column, and we look for our stack column. There, that looks a little bit better. Okay, while our chart is still highlighted, let's go ahead and make some changes. So we're going to go to our chart styles, and we're going to change the style of it to style 11. And let's see where 11 is. Well, that's 8. Let's go all the way down. There's style 11. So try to remember this, okay? We got the shortcut buttons to the side. You don't have to go to the format and design tools, although that's where it really takes you. So we have changed the style to style 11, and now we're going to move this chart. So to get rid of style 11, we can always hit the escape key. So we get out. Now let's go ahead and highlight our chart again, and this time we're going to move our chart. So just like last time, make sure you're on chart tools, design. By the way, if you don't see these tools, it simply means that your chart is not highlighted. So just click once, highlight the chart, your tools come back, go to design, and there's move chart. Click on move chart, and we're going to move this to the overview sheet, and we're going to click OK. And we're going to move our chart into position. So we want this new chart to cover the range F31 through M43. Well, F31. So it's going to start here through through M43. So it's going to go down. So as long as we get that upper corner into the F31 section, so we're going to bring this down so we can actually see everything. Don't forget, we can go, as long as the four-headed arrow is in place, we can go ahead and move it. So we need the top left corner to butt up into the corner of the F31 cell, so we want it right about there. Now remember how to get it exactly to snap into place. Hold on the Alt key, drag it so that the corner hits right there. Now we need to adjust it so that it stays within the range of F31 through M43. So we actually want it to finish up right about here. So we go to our sizing handle, hold down the Alt key so that way it snaps into place, and there we go. Oh no, it's M. So hold on the Alt key, snap it back, and we're done moving and sizing our chart. Now let's move ahead and change our chart title. Well, we know how to do that, right? We simply click once on the chart title. Once it's highlighted, we start typing. Breakdown of business expenses. Now we don't panic that nothing's happening here, right? Because it's all happening in the formula bar. When we're done, we go ahead and hit the Enter key. Make sure we spelled everything right. I think we did. And we're going to change the chart title font style to a non-bold. So we're going to unbold it. We go to the Home tab. We see that bold is highlighted, so we're going to uncheck it, make sure that it's not bold. And we want the color to match the same color as the title of the chart above it. So being that the last color is always the one that's being shown on the font color button, we don't have to go looking for it. We simply click on it and that changes the color. At this point, we're done with section 4.1. That's the first half of the tutorial, but I don't want you guys to just simply copy what I'm doing. I want you to understand what was really done. The first chart that we put in was the pie chart, and that gives us a visual representation of the different wines that are being produced in relation to each other. We know that the one that we're producing the most of is the Chardonnay. And we can see the visual representation here. We can see the numbers and we could easily determine, well, yes, we know that Chardonnay is the wine that's being produced the most of. However, in relation to the Pinot Grigio, well, the visual representation really tells us a lot more. It gives us a better picture of how much more we're actually producing. When we look at the projected revenue, well, we know that the revenue is the blue column and the expenses is the orange column, and it's looking fairly good. Initially, it looks like our expenses are more than our revenue, which makes sense because wine takes a while to make. We're not going to have wine the first year. We're barely preparing it. As we start making wine, we start being able to sell it, so we have some revenue. Now, by year 4, we can see that the revenue is increasing dramatically. And by the time we get to year 6, that almost looks like that's our break-even point. After year 7, this is where we're hoping to actually start making money. And after that, the income substantially, we hope, will surpass our expenses. And this is where we start making money. So as an investor, I'm going to look at this and say, well, you know, I'm not going to expect any revenue from my investment for the first 5 or 6 years. But year 7, we have to reevaluate if we're not making some money. And when we look at our expenses, now we want to look at exactly, well, where are our expenses? We want to know what this bar, this orange column over here is indicating. Well, when we break down those expenses, that's where we got the chart below it. So obviously, the biggest portion of our expenses is going to be our labor. Now, our labor, as we develop more wine, we're going to need more labor because it takes more people to make it. Notice that also the grapes, we have to buy more grapes to make more wine. So that's going higher and higher. However, let's look at maintenance. Maintenance doesn't necessarily exponentially go up as our labor goes up. And our loan repayment, well, that stays exactly the same. We know what the payment's going to be, and it's going to remain the same every single year. So that's why the bar, the blue bar of that indicates the loan repayment, that's not going to get any bigger. That stays the same. So it's not as important to create these. That's the easy part. If someone is telling you what to highlight, what to click, understand what you're creating. All right. So at this point, you can go ahead and take a break, and we're going to start with section 4.2. Okay, we're at section 4.2, and we're going to go to the projected cash flow worksheet. We're moving from overview to projected cash flow worksheet. And if you haven't noticed, we're creating another chart. This chapter is all about creating charts. So we're going to highlight the range B4 through L4. So B4 through L4. And also the non-adjacent range B27 through L27. So we need to go down. B27, hold on the control key. B27 through L27. So both of those ranges are highlighted. Let's make sure it stayed highlighted. Yes, it did. And let's look ahead. What are we creating? Well, we're looking at every year, and every year we have cash flow. So we're looking at a cash flow visual representation this time. Let's go to our Insert tab. We go to our Charts area, and this time we want a recommendation. What's a recommended chart? Well, after Excel takes a look at it, it goes ahead and recommends a chart, and the first one that it is suggesting is this one here, the clustered column. Well, is that really the one that we want? So this one is a little bit kind of difficult to see, but if we click on the next one, the line chart, this gives us a better idea of what's happening. The bar chart, it also does the same thing, but we're looking more at the endpoints of each column. So let's just go ahead and take the line chart instead. So we click OK, and while the chart is still there, we're going to change the style, right? This is a theme. We keep changing the style because we don't like the default. And we're going to go to style 15, scroll all the way to the bottom. I guess this is going to be down here. There it is, style 15. And we're going to move it once again. So how do we move it? We make sure we're in Chart Tools, Design, and remember, these show up immediately after we insert our chart. We go to Move Chart, and where are we going to move it? You guessed it, the Overview sheet. So we're going to go to Overview. We're going to click OK, and we're going to move it. So this time we want the chart to be in the range of B45 through D58. So B45, we know that's going to be a little bit lower. So we're going to take our chart, move it down, and it didn't take. Let's try it again. Okay, let's go ahead and scroll back up. So we want this corner to line up with this cell right here. And how do we get it to perfectly align? Don't forget, we hold on the Alt key so it snaps into place. And there is B45. No, this is B45. B45, while we're holding the Alt key, it snaps into place. And we want it to cover the range B45 through D58. All right, so we want it to cover all the way to right here. So we get the sizing handle, hold on the Alt key, so it snaps into place. So now we're going from B45 through D58. That's exactly what we want. Let's change the title, right? So how do we do that? We simply click on the title. Now we're not going to replace the text this time. We go ahead and take the text, the title that is given to us, but we're going to change the way it looks because we want it to match. We want it to match everything we've been doing. So we don't want this one to be bold, so we're going to go to our Home tab and uncheck the bold. And the last color that we used for a chart title was this blue, so we simply click on the blue, and we're done with this part of the configuration of the chart. Now let's go ahead and zoom into the chart that we just created. So I'm gonna scroll down, I'm gonna magnify a little bit because I want to get a closer look at this chart. sometimes the default values that are given to us by Excel, by Microsoft, may not necessarily fit the way we want it to look. So it's not that it's wrong, it's just maybe we can adjust it to make it a little bit better. So let's look at the chart itself. We remember from the bar chart that we created, we have a loss. The cash flow is negative. We're spending money and not making any money initially. Second year, we're actually spending a little bit less than what we're making, and eventually we break even. Remember, right around year 6. But let's look at the vertical axis. So just so you understand, this is vertical, this is horizontal, and we're going to change the look and feel of our vertical axis. So we can pretty much click on any number. Notice that the tooltip also tells us this is the vertical value, the vertical axis. So we're going to double click to highlight this value, and you notice that immediately the format axis pane shows up. In the axis pane, we're going to make a few changes. The first change that we're going to make is we're going to make the maximum, we're going to change it from, let's see, where's our maximum? There's our maximum. So we're going to change that. Instead of being, what is it, 600,000, we're going to change it to 175,000. All right, hit enter. Notice how that actually takes us out of the chart. Now let's keep moving here. Now we're going to change the units that are in between. So the unit section, it provides the intervals between the values. So these are called major ticks, all right? And there's also minor ticks. We'll look at those individually. These intervals right here, the differences between the numbers are set by Excel. So we're going to make that change as well. So on the major units, which are sometimes referred to as major ticks, we're going to change that to 250,000. Notice that the difference between the numbers has changed a little bit. So what exactly have we done? Well, we've made the changes here so that way we get a closer view of the way our chart, what our chart is representing. Now, as I'm looking at this, it almost doesn't make sense. Why are we getting cut off? Well, it turns out we didn't finish this. In the minimum, we're going to change that value to 0. So and the 175,000 is actually supposed to be 1.75 million, so it's 1,750,000. Okay, so this stays the same, 250,000 as far as the increments. So let's see what our chart looks like now. Okay, I'm still thinking this doesn't look quite right, so let me look at my instructions a little bit more carefully. Now we're going to make some actual changes inside of the chart. So we've done some visual changes, configuration changes. So let's go ahead and go to the projected revenue and expenses chart. So we're going to start with this one, and let's magnify it a little bit so we can see it a little bit better. And what we're going to do is we're going to look at the values that Excel gave us. Now these are default values by Excel, and usually they're pretty good, but sometimes we want to adjust them and make them a little bit more meaningful to us. So what we're going to do is we're going to double click on the vertical axis. That gets us inside of the values of the vertical axis, and it also brings up the format axis pane. So we have the boundaries, well, they call the bounds. The minimum is 0, so we know that this is 0, and the maximum is 2 million. We're going to change that a little bit. We're going to take the maximum and change that to 1,750,000. And the units, sometimes they're called ticks, so the units are the values in between. So going from this value to this value, that is a major unit. So we're going to change that. We're going to change it so that the values in between are 250,000. So now we have something that's a little bit more meaningful. The maximum value is represented by the maximum number. We've adjusted that. And we've also changed the different values in between. Now we're going to add some vertical lines to our chart. Let's get rid of our format axis. And we're going to bring up the chart elements. So chart elements, click on the plus. And we're going to add grid lines. So we go to grid lines. We already have some, so we're going to make some changes to those grid lines. And we're going to make it so that the major vertical lines are also visible. So we're going to put a check mark there. And if you notice that all that does is it adds some vertical grid lines to our chart. Now we want to make some changes to the gap between the columns. So we actually closed our format pane. So let's open it back up. There's several ways to do that. We can either click on our chart elements. We were working on the axis, right? So we can either go to the arrow of the axis, more options, and that will bring up our format pane again. Now we want to affect the series of the revenue. So we want to make this gap so that it's a little bit wider. They're a little bit more farther apart. So we go to our axis options, click on the arrow, and we want to affect the series, the total revenue. That's what we want to affect. Now notice that as soon as I choose that, there's bubbles all across all the bars that indicate the total series revenue. And we want to make that gap wider. We want to change that gap to 150. All right. So once we click away with that 150 or we hit enter, did you see the difference, the gap? It increased in size. So let's undo so you can see it again. All right, it changed pretty dramatically. So that is how we change the gap between our data series. Now this particular case, like I said, it was the revenue data series. Okay, now we're going to do a little bit of work on the cash flow chart. So we were working on the projected revenue expenses. So let's leave the format data series box open, all right, the pane. I just want you to see something. So we click on our cash flow chart, and I'm going to double click on the line itself. Okay, notice the change that happened on our format pane. So what we want to do now is I want you to notice that when we double clicked it, we get these markers. Well, we want those markers to always show, because if we click out, the markers are gone. So we're going to want those to show. So we're going to click on the marker, and then we're going to go to marker options. And right now it's set to none. So we're going to set that to automatic. And we want them to show up in white. So we're going to go to fill, and we're going to put the fill to solid fill, and we want it to be white. Okay, so at this point, if we click away, we should get these markers showing up in white. Now we want to add a data label, and we're going to add it to the last marker. So we're going to click once. Notice that when we click once, all the markers light up, but we only want to give a data label to the last one. So if I click on it again, notice that all the other ones disappear and this one stays. So we're going to click on the chart elements, and we're going to click on data labels, because we're going to give it a data label, but we're going to click on the arrow. And after the arrow, we're going to choose a data callout. So we're going to get both markers, the year and the and the dollar value. Now we actually want to modify this. So we're going to double click on that call out. And that's going to bring us to our format data labels, and we get the format data labels menu. It changes over. So we're going to click on the label options, and we're going to want the category name. Actually, no, we don't want that. We don't want the category name. We want it deselected. What we don't want is we don't want the year. So actually, once we clicked on category name and then we deselected it, notice that the year went away. So that's exactly what we wanted, only to show the dollar value. And we're going to hit escape to deselect the data. And now when we click on data, we actually have our callout. So that is how we edit the data line, and we put a call out on the data lines, and we also have our markers. So what did we learn here? So we added the markers, that way it indicates where the actual intersection is between the year and the time. We put a call out on the last marker, the last data marker. And let's move this a little bit though. I don't like the way it sits. So we're going to take it and move it just up a little bit, just so it makes a little bit more sense. There we go. All right. So that looks better. And let's move it a little to the right. There we go. I think that looks better. Okay. Okay, now we're going to work a little bit more on the projected revenue and expenses chart. So we're moving back up here. Let's go ahead and focus in on the projected revenue and expenses. And we're going to click to highlight it. Now, I want you to notice something. This area right here is called the Chart Elements Format tab. Okay? No, I'm sorry. This is the Format tab. Chart Elements, this is a Format tab, but this is the Chart Elements arrow. Now I want you to notice something. When I click in this area, we get a tooltip that says Chart Area. When we click inside here, notice it changes to Plot Area. When I click on the axis, it gives me the vertical axis. I can click on the years, that gives me the horizontal axis, and then we have the legend. So if we don't want to mess around, or we think we're going to miss when we click on it, we could actually go straight to the element that we're trying to change. And in this case, we're going to change the chart area. We're going to change the color of the chart area. So we choose chart area, we're still in the format, and we're going to go to shape fill, and we're looking for the theme color gold accent 4 lighter 80%. Or here's gold, I think it's gold, accent 4 lighter 80%. That's the one that we want. Alright, so notice the change that took place. It actually, if you look carefully, it matches the pie chart now. Now we're going to make a change to the plot area. So we go to our chart elements arrow, go to the plot area, see the highlight, and we're going to change that fill to white. So we go to our shape fill, we go to white background 1, and I think we're done changing the color scheme of this particular chart. Our white. Alright, let's look at the rest of our charts, and notice that this chart doesn't really match the rest of our charts. So let's make some change. Let's get rid of this pane. This pane is a pain. Alright, so how do we make this chart down here look similar to the one right above it so it matches? Well, first thing we got to do is click on it, and then what we're going to do is we're going to choose the chart area, and in the chart area we're going to use the fill, and we use the gold accent 4 80%, and then we went to the plot area change that to white. And notice that we have vertical grid lines on this one. So let's go ahead and add some vertical grid lines. So we go to our Add Chart Elements button. And then we're going to go to our grid lines. Click on the arrow. And then primary major vertical lines. That should get it to look the same. All right. Okay, so now that matches. So the only chart now that doesn't really match should be our cash flow. So let's move over to cash flow. And first we select it. Go to our chart area. It's already there. We go to our shape fill. Gold, accent 4, lighter 80%. Go to our plot area. We want that fill in white. We want to add the vertical axis chart elements. So we go to grid lines, or actually the grid lines. Click on the arrow and then primary major vertical. And now we have, if we zoom out, our charts all look the same. How many types of charts have we created so far? Okay, so the first one we created was a pie chart, giving us a visual representation of the items that we're producing. We have a column bar chart, which shows us the projected revenue versus expenses. We have a stacked column bar chart, column chart, which shows us a breakdown of our expenses, and it's broken down within the same bar. And then we have a line chart showing us the cash flow. Now, wouldn't it be pretty beneficial if we could make a combination of these? So for example, this is the type of chart that we use to show trends. Okay, so we show the trend, but it would work really well if we could put that in with a combination of items. So guess what we're doing next? So let's go to projected cash flow. We're going to highlight the two non-adjacent ranges of B4 through L5 and also the net income. So we're going to hold on the control key, B23 through L23. Go to our insert tab, recommended charts. And because we don't have a combination chart here, we're going to choose all charts. And we're going to go to combo. We're going to make our own, so it's going to be custom. And we want the cases produced represented by a line, but notice how it's flat because it's representing the years. We want the secondary axis, which were the numbers that we saw. So there's our trend going up. And the net income is going to be expressed by a clustered column. So we click OK. Now we're never happy with the style, so we might as well change that now. Style 8. Okay, so get rid of that and let's go ahead and move it because all of our charts are in the overview tab. Click OK. Now we can't see it, but it's up here. So we need to drag it down. And we're going to put it along with the other charts. So we move it about here. Now we hold on the control key, or the alt key, I'm sorry. Snap it in place. And then keep holding down the alt key so it snaps in place there. Now it looks good. Now let's make it look like the rest of the chart. So we go to our format tab, right? The chart area, we want it to be that accent 4, gold accent 4, lighter 80%. The plot area, we want to be white. We want to add the grid lines on the vertical grid lines, so we click on that, primary vertical grid lines. And we're going to change the title, so we're going to click once, change that to sales projections. We're going to hit the enter key because we still need to make changes to the title, and we want the title to be not bold. We want the font style to be Calibri Light. We want the font style to be that blue color, right? Blue, what is it? Blue accent 1. Let's just make sure. Blue accent 1. Yep, that's the one that we want. All right. And now the chart looks just like the others. And just like I do in class, I actually forgot something. So we need to remove the legend. So we go to our chart elements, and that's pretty simple. We just uncheck the legend. There we go. Now let's add axis titles to the primary and secondary vertical axis. So here's primary, secondary vertical axis. So we're going to click on our chart. We're going to go to our chart elements, and then we're going to click on axis titles. Put a check mark there. Notice that we get 2 placeholders. All right. So we're going to click on the left axis title. Just click on it once and start typing. We want to have net income. Enter. And it's still highlighted. So let's make some changes. We want the font color to be orange accent 2. So orange. Is that orange? Nope, that's gold. Orange accent 2, darker 25%. Okay. And that way the theme color matches. And we're going to select the numbers on the left scale axis. So we're going to click on the numbers now, and we want to make those match as well. So let's go ahead and give them the same font color. And now we're going to click on the right axis title placeholder, and we're going to call that cases sold. Hit enter, and we are going to make that one blue accent 1, darker 25%. So blue accent 1, darker 25%. That's going to be right there. We want to make this title easier to read, so we want it to actually rotate down. Right now you're reading it up. This makes sense because it's going up, and we want to make this one read down. So we're going to click on our Home tab, and we're going to click on our Orientation button, and we're going to say Rotate Text Down. There, that's a little bit easier to read. And let's go ahead and change our numbers on our secondary axis, and let's make those the same color. There we go. Let's also make our axis a little bit easier to read. Let's zoom up a little bit because that's hard to read anyway. All right, so we're going to double click on our axis title, or our secondary axis, I'm sorry, and we want the minimum. We do want the minimum to be 0, but why don't we set the maximum value to be negative. Let's change the minimum to negative 4,000. All right. And let's change our maximum to, actually no, we're going to leave that one there. All right. So there, that makes it a little bit easier to read. Let's take a look at what really happened here. Let's close this pane. Let's undo. So notice that we made our numbers for the cases sold line a little bit easier to read by changing the gaps between the numbers on our vertical axis. So let's redo. There we go. That makes it a little bit easier to read now. Okay, for now this is going to be the end of our second video. There's going to be one more. Don't worry, we're almost done. It's not, the third one's not going to be very long. So for those of you keeping track, we are on page EX235. There's only 2 more types of charts left. We're going to create a line chart. All right. And then we're going to do spark lines. And we're going to learn how to edit a line chart because that's going to come into play every once in a while. And after we do the spark lines, I think that's the last chart that we have. So, well, we're going to have data bars, which is kind of a spark line, similar to the spark line. So then we have data bars, and the last thing we're going to do is enter a watermark onto our worksheet, make it a draft, and then we'll be done. So after this video, I think we've got maybe another, at the very most, like 20 minutes. All right? So I'll see you on the next video.